I suppose some people will see today's show and say, oh, Neil Bonnett and Bobby Allison are old friends. Of course he's going to say something nice about him. But Bobby Allison doesn't need me to make him look good. A few years back, it seemed like every racing fan in the world had something good to say about Bobby after his near-fatal crash at Pocono. And they didn't keep quiet about it either. For Bobby Allison, the outpouring of love and support from his fans was the best medicine in the world.
When I woke up in that room in Lakeshore Hospital that day and realized that I was in the world, didn't know what year it was and didn't know where I was. All I knew is, boy, I hurt. Why do I hurt this bad? And why is everything so mixed up? But right from that point, I could see cards from people. I could see evidence that the fans were close at hand. And it was a really big piece of support for me, and I'm sure for Judy also.
That meant a tremendous amount, and I don't know how we would ever repay people.
Bobby began racing in Miami, Florida over 40 years ago. He did it driving his high school car at Hialeah. He was a natural from day one. But even a veteran would have had trouble maneuvering that old beat-up car.
It was so totally stock that it was incredible. You think of today's standards and the lowest division car you'd think of at a racetrack today is so far ahead of where that car was. But I went out to the racetrack. A lot of cars showed up for that amateur division, and finished decent the first couple weeks. About the third week, I won the race, and I thought that was really, really neat.
It might have been neat for you, but your mother didn't like you running that race car, did she?
No, she really thought that was where all the hoodlums and the rest of the people that didn't have any personal ambition, that's where they went. And I had to really plead with her to give me permission to run there. And when she gave me that, she thought she was giving me permission for one race. And I thought she was giving me permission for 100 years.
At that time in that area, there was a Bob Thunderman. He was a heck of a racer. Who do you think that was?
Well, Bob Thunderman was a kid that ended up with that name. Bobby Allison was going through a couple weeks of Mom trying to convince him that permission was for 1 week, not 100 years. And so it was easier just to do a name change.
After a while, Bobby and his brother Donnie headed to Alabama with longtime friend Red Farmer. As usual, it was Bobby Allison looking to the future. He had found what he saw as the next big thing in racing, pavement.
Over in Georgia, the tracks were dirt tracks, but I thought that pavement really looked toward the future. If we were going to have big speedways, they were going to be paved, and so it was important for me to get the best I could on pavement. I went to Alabama. Donnie went along with me just as a companion. I took my little modified car up there to Montgomery and Dixie Speedway. So I went home after a couple weeks in Alabama and told Red, I said, Red, I found great country. I said, I found nice people and really nice racetracks, and they're paved.
So Bobby's search for pavement brought him to God's country, and we became known throughout the country as the Alabama Gang.
When I was a kid, looking at the Alabama Gang, I looked with, I guess, starstruck eyes at Red Farmer, my dad, Neil Bonnett, my Uncle Donnie. And I always thought, it really would be neat to be a part of the Alabama Gang.
We used to travel like gypsies. We'd pull out, 3 of us in a row with a little pickup truck towing a trailer behind us, and we'd go to these different tracks, and we always used to pull them together.
So we'd got our stuff going pretty good, and there was a big event came up at, I guess it was over at Weaverville, North Carolina. And so we took our Alabama cars and headed that way, and we were pulling in, and some of the guys said, oh no, here's that Alabama Gang. And
well, there it was.
There we were. It kind of hung with that tag from then on.
Joe Amato. When he goes out for a Sunday drive, he goes with Autolite. But Monday through Saturday, Joe goes one better. Autolite Platinum, the premium performance plug for your everyday driving. This Joe's not your average Sunday driver. And Autolite Platinum's not your average everyday plug.
All right, I'll trade you an Allison for a Wallace.
I'll give you a Strickland for a Marlin.
I need an Earnhardt.
You got it.
Who's got the Busch Grand National driver?
What do you give for him?
I got Walter's crew. I need his car.
Throwing a Gant?
How about Rudd?
Who's got Labate?
Ernie Irvin deal?
Deal.
There's one team missing.
Okay, boys. It's time to trade.
Here's Morgan Shepherd and the Collect Pro Set racing cards. Pro Set's official Winston Cup racing cards, now with all the top drivers.
Hi everyone, I'm Benny Parsons and welcome to NASCAR Video Magazine. In every volume of this collector series, we're going to take you for a close-up look at the world of NASCAR. In a way it's never been seen and can't be seen anywhere else.
We'll take you to the front row of the action and spend some personal time with the sport's biggest names. But we'll go behind the scenes to the shop to reveal the latest breakthroughs in the world's most competitive race cars. We'll meet the unsung heroes and key personalities of the sport. And NASCAR Video Magazine will capture timeless moments from the past. Our team of top journalists will be bringing the entire NASCAR lifestyle roaring right into your living room. And I get to share some war stories with 7-time Daytona 500 winner Richard Petty.
Okay, let's get to it.
To order your first 60-minute NASCAR video, call now 1-800-852-4400. Use your credit card and get the special introductory price of only $9.95. Call now 1-800-852-4400.
The Winston at night. Racing's hottest event. Just got hotter. Don't be left in the dark when Winston Cup racers battle it out under a raging moon for a record first. The Winston live Saturday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern on TNN. It's one hot night.
Welcome back to Hueytown, the world headquarters of the Alabama gang. In the sport of auto racing, there's no such thing as an instant winner. Bobby Allison is proof of that. When he began his Winston Cup career 30 years ago, nobody could have possibly known they were watching one of the greatest champions the sport would ever know.
My very first shot at the Winston Cup type deal, which back then was the Grand National deal, Judy's older sister, my wife Judy's older sister, Carolyn, husband, Ralph Stark, had a 1960 Chevrolet that Herbie Tillman had tried to run a little bit in the Grand National, which is now Winston Cup. Started 39th and finished 39th, still running. I was like 125 miles behind at the end of 500 miles, but I was still running. That was important to me.
And he kept on running, but that was about all. Then, Bobby found a rule that would turn his luck around.
They had these rules where you could build a car and run a smaller engine, but you could run a lighter car. And I had already seen a thing in Alabama where the light cars beat the heavy cars, even if the heavy cars were good race cars with good motors. As the race went on, the light cars seemed to have an advantage.
So Bobby took advantage of that rule and built him a lighter car from the ground up. But back in those days, for an independent building a car was not the exact science it is today. Then it was strictly trial and error. Those were the fun days. You tried just as hard, but the stakes weren't so high. When he did start winning races, it was real live David beating on Goliath. Bobby Allison was building his own cars in his teeny little shop, and he was running the wheels off the big factory teams.
Bobby did a fantastic job doing his own work, building his own cars and getting out and competing against the factory teams. There's not many people around can do that, but it takes a person like Bobby Allison to be able to do it, and he did it in good fashion.
It wasn't until after I started racing on the Winston Cup circuit that I realized how much effect the factory support has on the individual teams. And to know now that he beat those guys with the Chrysler support and Ford support back then, that was a tremendous accomplishment.
I don't think people realize how much input you had on the mechanical side of racing.
Well, I can think back about it, Neil, and And it goes right back to not having the cash to go out and buy the stuff. And I discovered early on that I could make the stuff. I could run lathes and milling machines and weld and run the pipe bender, and even got to where I could do a little bit of the sheet metal work. And well, I think what contributed to a win back then was personal effort.
And what an effort it was. Bobby took very careful notes of everything he did, and slowly but surely, Bobby's trial and error of building a race car became an exact science.
The first front steer Chevelle that I built, it took me about a week to make the suspension on one side. I kept running the wheel up and down and working with the steering and working with the A-frame lengths and all that. And it took me about 3 hours to build the other side.
You'd have to know the Allisons to understand why he could do that. They're good mechanics, every one of those, from Davey to Donnie, right on. Bobby was a real good mechanic, still is, and those guys come up the hard way. And that's one thing I think when you talk about real pure race drivers, nobody come up and said, well, here's the car, boys, go racing. They built their own cars. They went out, they knew what they had, and they knew how to do the best with it.
Bobby spent 30 years teaching himself how to piece together a car, and those smarts have saved his hide on more than a few occasions. Like the day in Columbus, Georgia, he blew the only engine of his modified racer in qualifying. Did he pack it in?
Well, it happened to be, I lost that engine, and there sat my truck, and it had a pretty nice engine in it. And so, poor old truck, too bad. Grabbed that engine, stuck in that car, ran really good in the race. I put that engine back in the truck and went back to Miami.
Just drove the thing back to Miami. That was Bobby. Win any way you can. His list of victories is a list of racing's premier events. Daytona, Talladega, the Dixie 500, the Winston 500, IROC, the Firecracker 400. But don't think Bobby Allison had victory lane all to himself. There was another man who was fighting him for it every step of the way. His name was Richard Petty. And he and Bobby hooked up for some of the most ferocious battles in racing history.
But there were also folks that wanted to see somebody race Richard Petty, and there were probably a few that wanted to see somebody beat Richard Petty.
You know, back in the early 70s, we got to beating on each other so bad we finally just had to call a truce to it. We run at Martinsville and beat on each other, and the last 3 or 4 laps, and you know, we just was running and went to Wilkesboro the next week, and if it had been another lap, neither one of us would have made it. That's how bad the cars were when it was over with.
We did rub each other, and you know, he'd come up and try to ease me over against the wall, and I'd come up and try to rub on him, and, you know, move him out of the way and things like that. And we did that at a lot of racetracks and for several years, with the key being that we both always made it back to victory lane, or back to the starting line. I'm really proud of the deal of my racing with Richard, that it was always exciting, it was always competitive, and there was contact, but we always both made it back to the finish line.
When we come back, more of Bobby Allison's amazing career. And you're going to see that not every victory was won on a racetrack.
Oil. It's the lifeblood of your engine. That makes your oil filter your engine's most vital organ. That's why Fram keeps going the extra mile to make the best protection even better. The Fram Extra Guard oil filter. Unique glass fiber paper stops more dirt than any other filter for the best protection ever. Fram Extra Guard. American or import, it's an extra lease on life.
You've got to be tough to run with this crowd. That's why 28 of 33 pit crews at Indy use Craftsman tools. The tools so rugged, they're guaranteed forever. Because in this neighborhood, only the strongest survive.
1,600 Craftsman hand tools, made in America, guaranteed forever, only at Sears.
You can count on me.
You've finished vacationing here. But one thing's for sure. North Carolina will never leave you.
Behold the passion and pageantry of the noble warrior within. Armed with a snapper recycling mulcher mower with its 2x2 split level blade. 2 blades for the way up, 2 blades for the way down. Their Ninja 2x2 blade cuts every blade of grass who knows how many times. It's also handy that I don't have to take the time to beg. Looks like I did. Snapper. Anything less just won't mulch it. Now pay nothing down and no payments until October.
Before Bobby Allison won the Winston Cup in 1983, he had 5 second-place finishes and was 5 times runner-up. When he actually won the championship, the very next season, he won it all over again.
When I woke up in that hospital room at Lakeshore, Alabama, and, you know, really didn't know where I was or what year it was or whatever, the first thing I told Judy, I got to get out of here because I got to go win that championship. She said, no, you already won that. I said, no, I didn't. I got to go do it. She said, you won it. I don't believe you. So she brought a Winston Cup Illustrated magazine that had the picture of the car in front of the Waldorf on the cover, and said, see that? And I said, yeah, I did win that thing, didn't I?
Yeah, Bobby, you sure did. But while stock cars were Bobby's first love, he wasn't afraid to try his hand at Indy cars. After his first unsuccessful attempt, he vowed no more. But Roger Penske was able to lure him out for one more test drive.
That didn't go much better than the first round. I did go to Ontario, went back to Indy, led a lap at Indy. I have a little trophy at home that I led a lap at Indianapolis under competition during the 75 Indy 500. Kind of proud of that. But went to Pocono, went back to Michigan, went back to stock car racing.
Stock cars. That's where Bobby Allison belonged, and he had the winning record to prove it. One of the sweetest victories came at the 1988 Daytona 500.
It's really neat to be able to win Daytona, especially at age 50. But it's even neater if the best young man you know of is back here in second and he happens to be your son. Not only is he the best youngster come along, but he is my son too.
That is my fondest memory of all time. My dad won the race. I finished second. It was a tough race all day long. I knew that was something that had never been done before and may never be done again. And it's something that we can remember and cherish forever.
At that particular time, it was really terrific. Unfortunately, right now, Bobby can't remember that, and we're hoping that one day he will.
The reason Bobby can't remember that day is because of the big crash in Pocono back in 1988. After taking multiple hits from cars around him, Bobby smacked the fence so hard that his car just crumpled. Family and friends watched helplessly as the rescuers cut his twisted body out of the wreckage. Miraculously, he was alive, but just barely. He hovered in a coma for 2 agonizing months before waking up and heading down the longest, toughest road he'd ever been down, the road to rehabilitation.
The hardest part, I believe, is right now because he is so close to being pretty much all better, but not quite there. And it's like been very time consuming, and he's always been a person that wanted things to happen very quickly and didn't have much patience. And so this is drug out 4 years almost now, and it's just been a long time for him.
In that time, the importance of the race fan has been dramatically demonstrated. Just as Bobby Allison inspired and gave to his fans over the years, so have they nurtured and strengthened him during his terrible trial.
The fans were the people that really made the situation that I wanted to be involved in. They really made it possible. because they bought that ticket to come in there and watch me race, and my earnings came out of the money they were spending. And so I always felt like the fans were a step closer to me. You know, they were people that were really supporting what I wanted to do.
If you're ever in Hueytown, Alabama, and you want to find Bobby Allison, who's the leader of the Alabama gang, your best bet is at 12 o'clock noon. His headquarters are right here in the Iceberg Restaurant. Bobby, when we talk about the Alabama gang and the way it started, you know, I heard the stories from you that came up here. Y'all came up in his pickup trucks, no place to stay. Stayed in friends' houses up here, and you borrowed each other's equipment, and you'd use Red's motor, and he'd use yours, and y'all traded everything back. You think we'll ever see that in racing again, when you could just open the doors to any friend's house and stay there and just race out of somebody else's place?
Neil, that's another thing that is so tough with the way that the whole world has gone. You know, the technology that's come in has brought expense with it that is so different. The idea of a whole group of us getting one motel room, you know, all of us taking a shower, and 3 or 4 guys taking the one big double bed that was in there and sleeping together even, was just a way that people that were good friends, that were genuine friends back in that period of time, were able to do things.
We talked a little bit earlier about the Alabama gang of you and Red and Donnie coming along, and then, boy, you sure gave me a good shot in the arm. I drove your cars and you helped me get into Winston Cup racing, and look what a darn monster you created here. Here I am sitting across the table and bench racing, but man, it sure was fun.
Well, Neil, it really was. And I got to say this to you in front of whoever might be watching this, that you were one of the youngsters that came along that I had a genuine liking for. And you had done some running before you ever got around me. And you came over there and would work all night with me and then go back to work, or your regular job. And one day, as I remember it, Neil, I just said, Neil, I really appreciate the help. What could I do for you? And you made the remark, well, I'd like to drive one of your cars sometime. And I said, well, been asked to be at 2 places next weekend, so we can handle that. You took the thing and went and won the first of the some 60 or 70 feature races that you won for me over a year and a half. And I feel fortunate that I was in a position that at least I could put in a good word for you to go ahead and move into the Winston Cup stuff, which you did, and really, really did a nice job of that, too.
Bobby, I had a ball with it, and I'll tell you what, folks, I'm going to be greedy. Time's up for y'all, but I'm going to sit here and bench race with an old friend for a long time, and it's going to get pretty technical and pretty good fun here with 2 guys sitting here just kicking it back, and we'll see you next week.
Winners has been brought to you by Autolite Spark Plugs and Wire and Cable Products. Autolite Spark Plugs, guaranteed for 2 years no matter how far you go. And Fram Filter Products. Fram, you can pay a little now or a lot later. And by Pennzoil, the motor oil that outperforms any leading motor oil against viscosity breakdown.
Dominating one class of an HR racing wasn't enough for Pat Austin. Dominating 2 seemed more like it. Next week on Winners, we'll meet the kid they call Top Gun.
By Gum Out, quality automotive products providing solutions to engine problems.
The exciting world of speed and beauty, next on TNN.
Coming up tonight on race day at 8:30 Eastern, we'll have the latest on qualifying for the Indianapolis 500, along with a preview of the Winston All-Star race you'll see next Saturday night here on TNN. And we'll have highlights of the day in racing, including the ASA show in Milwaukee. Be sure to join us.
Race Day, 2nd edition, 8:30 p.m. Eastern today on TNN Motorsports.